We are now live. We are now live. Hey guys.
Rock and roll. What's
Want
up?
to jump on here?
What's up, everybody? Hey.
All right. Almost ready?
Rock and roll.
Hey guys. My
Ready
name
to
is
do
Lisa Scott.
I'm Eric Bustillo.
We are both registered dietitians, and we are here to present you with a seminar on
Gluten-free, and is it right for you?
yes, and some food intolerances. We'll be going over food intolerances over FODMAPs. Let me back up a little bit so you guys can see me. And we're going to be going over if gluten-free is right for you and if it's necessary for you to go gluten-free. Okay?
I think that it's interesting how gluten-free has turned into like a fad,
Yeah.
right? It had its rise in popularity and everything. You know,
Yep.
we'll talk a little bit about that, but I think we'll discuss in more detail.
We had a little puppy situation
Sorry.
just now.
Yeah.
What happened to him?
Maybe he got
He got spooked?
maybe something to do.
Okay, maybe
Sorry
there's a
about
ghost
that.
there. We have puppies here, lots of puppies here at P360, so I want to make sure everybody's safe.
Yeah.
But I remember I was at a fitness conference, and this was when I was a little bit younger, and I remember seeing these two women. They had like biggest muscles, super lean in shape, and I was like, oh my God, what do you guys do? And she was like, well, we're gluten-free. We've been gluten-free for years. And that always stuck with me because it's like, oh, to be in shape, to have muscles, to be really lean means you need to be gluten-free. That was kind of like what they were insinuating, which we know now is not the reality, of course, unless you have a specific condition. But I even remember, I think the Jimmy Kimmel show, they did a segment where, and they were in LA, and they were asking people like, oh, so are you gluten-free? And the people were like, yes, of course. And then they would ask them what gluten-free really means, and they didn't know. They just thought gluten was a carb, you know? So I think we're going to dispel some of the myths around that today.
Yeah, it also goes to show you that public health and public education on nutrition is something that we still have to go a little bit more into detail on.
Yeah.
People need to learn all these things, and even, you know, like what you were saying, just because someone kind of like looks the part, they look
Right.
fit, we make this association with, okay, you know, they're gluten-free, so if I want to look a certain way or feel
I
a
have
certain
to
way,
do that.
I have to do it as well.
Yeah, so, all right guys, so we're gonna get right into it, and the first thing we're gonna get into is asking the question, what is gluten? Okay, so contrary to popular belief, gluten is actually a protein, and it's actually composed of several different proteins like glutenin, gliadin. There's several, those are the main ones that you might hear about, but it's actually composed of several different proteins. It is found in products like wheat, rye, barley, triticale, durum, semolina. So all those things are in bread, bagel, cereal. And what it does, the gluten, when they add gluten to those products, it's not necessarily bad by itself. Gluten in the products make those things kind of more dense, kind of like stick together. So you actually might find gluten and even like makeup products and lotions because it does make those things stick a little bit closer together. So that's an interesting thing that I didn't know about until several years, because I would look at like certain products and it's like gluten-free, like a lotion. I was like, this is so stupid. Like, why? This is a marketing scheme. But in reality, if somebody does have celiacs, any kind of gluten, even in the products, can make them have a reaction. All right. So we also say things like wheat, rye, and barley, but also semolina, which is like semolina flour, which is just in your regular basic pasta. Also farina, that's like it's like a cereal with a little boy on the cover, like we used to eat when we were little. Even that has gluten in it, which is part of wheat. So guys, remember, gluten by itself is not bad, right? It's literally just a protein. It's like saying bananas are bad, right? They're not bad by itself. It's just that they are bad for someone if somebody does have celiac disease. You want to talk a little bit about celiac?
Yeah, well, and when I was learning about celiac disease and gluten back in school, I remember the acronym that they told us to remember was BROW, B-R-O-W, which was barley, rye, oats, and wheat. But it was a little bit wrong, because oats don't have gluten.
Right, they're
They
naturally
just
gluten-free.
exactly. They're just kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Manufactured.
Right, in a gluten facility.
Exactly. So it'll contain gluten, and then if someone does consume a little bit too much of it, they have an issue, assuming that they have celiac disease.
Right.
So just so that you all can understand a little bit more on the physiology of what celiac disease or celiac sprue is, in our intestine, we have a bunch of little
Microvilli.
Like microvilli is what they're called. They just look like these little sticks, if you will, that run all through our intestine. So Lisa's drawing it for over there. Those of you listening on audio, I apologize. Those of you watching on video, you get to see Art
like
Basil at his finest.
Yes, Art Basil. It's like the little nose hairs. You know your little nose hairs on the inside, and then you have a little hair-like projection in your ear. It's literally the same thing. It's just inside your gut lining, your intestinal lining.
And they look almost like little worms or like little small fingers. That what they do is they allow for better absorption. So what celiac disease is, with celiac, you know, Lisa talked about the two different kinds of proteins, the gluten and the gliadin. Typically with celiac, someone doesn't respond well to gliadin. That's like the main contributor to giving you issues with any kind of inflammation or upset stomach, having to go to the bathroom. And what happens with celiac disease is that those microvilli, those little fingers, if you will, that help absorb nutrients into your intestine, they kind of get like cut off, if you will. If you eat gluten, you don't really have those microvilli standing strong. So now it's almost like, as opposed to having these little fingers there absorbing nutrients, it's just kind of like flat.
Right.
So now, when it's flat that way, it doesn't allow for optimal absorption. So if you can see the drawing over here, you see one half has microvilli and the other half has nothing. It's just kind of like a flat ground there that doesn't really help as far as absorption.
And that happens because the intestinal, that lining actually gets damaged, right? So that autoimmune, so celiac, guys, remember, is a autoimmune disease. So you can't just say, I have celiacs and I'm not going to eat gluten. Like, you literally have to be diagnosed because it is a disease, and it's definitely not something fun to have. Like, it's not something fun you want to mess around with, because if you do eat gluten and you have celiacs, you actually have like abdominal pain, you have cramping, you can get diarrhea. Like, it's really, really, it's awful. So it's not something you just want to throw around and say, oh, I have celiacs. And you know, sometimes people will go to a restaurant and they'll call and use that also. They're like, oh, I have celiacs and eat gluten-free. So just kind of think about, be sensitive to it, because if somebody does have the actual disease, it's really, it's awful what happens once they do ingest gluten. Like, it's not fun. It's like having like a stomach bug. That's always painful.
Yeah, it's like a constant feeling there.
Yeah. And so what we're going to talk about too is how you get tested for it. So the gold standard to get tested for celiacs is actually to go in and take a little biopsy from your intestine, and then they'll look at that under a microscope and be able to see if those microvilli are damaged, okay? Another test you can do is just in the blood. And I actually got this test done recently, about a few months ago, because I was having, again, issues and I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And they test for antibodies in your blood. So kind of like antibodies when you're having an allergic reaction, right? Your immune system is overworking because it's, you know, there's inflammation and you have this response. They'll test for those antibodies in your blood. So if it comes back negative, it means you don't have it. But if it comes back positive, you can continue and get the other tests if you need, you know, further information. But usually a blood test will do the trick, and it's not as invasive. Obviously, they just take your blood. It's not as invasive as actually them going in and taking. And it doesn't hurt when they do it. You're obviously out. You're not like awake while they do it, but there is no pain because you don't really feel that. You know, you're under like the twilight anesthesia.
Yeah, and something else to keep in mind with doing the biopsy. If you do suspect that you have some kind of celiac issue, celiac disease or celiac sprue, you don't want to eliminate gluten from your diet yet, right? So some people will think that they have celiac, and then they'll go ahead and want to get tested, but they've eliminated celiac. What happens is you'll get a false positive or false negative in this case test. it'll show as if you don't have celiac, but that's because all of the microvilli are functioning perfectly fine. There was no celiac interaction, because when it interacts, it kind of flattens out those microvilli. So if you do suspect it and you've spoken with your doctor or a nurse or a dietitian or whoever you consulted with, you definitely want to make sure that if you're going to get a biopsy done, continue to consume celiac until you get that test. I'm sorry, gluten. Continue to consume gluten until you get the celiac test done, if it's a biopsy, and then just do what we did after and show what.
And another thing that I do want to mention is that there is something. So we're gonna go. Did I say insulin sensitivity? Gluten sensitivity. Oh my god. Let me change that. See, I'm getting all my medical insurance. Okay. So if you don't suspect that you have this like super serious abdominal cramping after you eat gluten, and remember, gluten can be in anything oats, anything. Anything oats. Sorry. It could be in some oats. But if you are very, very serious and you have been diagnosed with celiac, you should buy oats that say gluten-free oats, because that means they have been processed on a facility that does not process gluten, okay? But if you don't have celiac, you can just eat regular oats because they are gluten-free by themselves. Another thing that does tend to happen is we also have a gluten sensitivity. This is something different than the actual celiac. Okay, so gluten sensitivity, it affects, one of the facts that I got is it affects about 18 million Americans. All right, and if you have a gluten sensitivity, it doesn't mean that you have that celiac, you have diarrhea right away, but there could be other symptoms like a stuffy nose, brain fog. If you do have that sensitivity, there is an association possibly with like ADHD in children as well. But you can also get a blood test for that. So just in my case, for example, I did do an allergy blood test, and it did say that I was gluten sensitive, but it did not say when I got the end of the blood test, it didn't say that I have celiac, right? So it's kind of like there are two different things that can happen there. And with gluten sensitivity, if you don't think it's as severe as a celiac, you can actually cut it out of your diet. Or I would recommend for 2 weeks and see if there's an improvement, right? So you cut out bread, you cut out Ezekiel bread, you cut out, any kind of maybe like chips maybe that you're eating that may have gluten, okay? So you cut out everything like that, everything that you think may be contributing to that has gluten in it. And in 2 weeks, if your symptoms are better, you may be one of those people that have a sensitivity. And then after 2 weeks, you can add it back in, and if you get those symptoms again, then you are sensitive to it, so then you just cut out of your diet.
Yeah.
But you do have to go through this test, guys, if you want to be serious about it, if you suspect that's one of the things in there, okay? But one thing that happens when people are eating a lot of wheat, and they're eating constantly wheat, and the wheat in today's world is different than it was even 50 years ago. What tends to happen is that once they cut out all of these bread products, some people end up losing weight, because now you're not eating donuts, you're not eating sandwiches for lunch, you're eating more wholesome food. So that is one effect of going gluten-free, is that some people may lose weight because you're not eating all that crap. Like, let's be realistic about it, okay? But what they found was that when people cut out gluten, one of the things they may be actually reducing is their FODMAPs. Now, we did, I think, a seminar on this previously. FODMAP stands for fermentable oligomonosaccharides and polyols. So literally, this is just referring to these types of sugars that are found in fruits like apples or different apples, beans, some nightshade vegetables like xylitol and things in gum. So it's this class of food that tends to cause more digestive distress in people. And when people are gluten sensitive and they also incorporate this FODMAPs diet, like a low FODMAPs diet, people also seem to get some relief out of it. Because it may not just be the gluten, but it may be all those other things that they're consuming that are giving them issues.
Yeah.
You want to say
So
something about that?
Now that kind of brings up the point of, do they have something happening there with gluten?
Right.
And or is it other things? Like, do they have a problem digesting certain kinds of fibers, if you will? Because you'll also notice that FODMAP, that kind of diet is what's used for people who suffer from irritable bowel syndrome.
IBS, yeah.
So if you have IBS or IBD or some kind of gastritis, and especially now FODMAPs are a little more popular, where doctors will recommend to the patient, okay, let's try getting on a FODMAP diet and see how you feel. Everyone tends to respond a little bit differently. Some of the things that you were mentioning about gluten sensitivities, I have a close friend of mine who she gets migraines when she consumes gluten. And then it goes to show you how we're all a little different, because I have it and nothing really happens to me. But then when you have a combination of these different foods, if you do the FODMAP diet and you do notice that you start responding a little bit better, it could potentially be not just the gluten, but your body's just responding better to less of this kind of fiber or more of this other food. And you hit a really good point when you mentioned that you just tend to eat a little bit more wholesome.
Right, like whole foods are processed.
Yeah, so now it's like you're getting better quality of it.
Yeah. And I know like this can be kind of difficult to navigate, so it is recommended that, you know, if you do suspect you're having one of these issues, that you work with a registered dietitian. And one thing that I had a hard time with, I remember, because I was suffering through all this stuff myself, was that, you know, fruits are healthy, vegetables are healthy, but when I was eating them, I was getting these bad symptoms, and I'm like, well, I'm supposed to eat them, right? You're not supposed to do anything that's not good for your body. So when I cut out the majority of fruit from my diet, when I cut out the majority actually of vegetables for a certain period of time and only ate the specific ones, my symptoms became better. So if like I eat too many berries, bad reaction. If I eat beans, bad reaction. If I eat Brussels sprouts or cabbage, bad reaction. Broccoli, cauliflower. So like with FODMAPs, it's not that you have to completely cut out these foods. Some you do, but you have a limited amount of what you can eat. So maybe your body can only tolerate half of a cup of broccoli, but it cannot tolerate 2 cups of broccoli. So this is where it really does take a little bit of time of experimentation. But if you are having stomach issues and you are having bloating after you're eating, this is all related to the food. And remember, the food itself is not bad. It's just not compatible with your body at this point. Okay, so, and your body does go through hormonal changes, maybe like if you're pregnant or if you just had a baby, if you just turned 28 or 30 or 40. Right, stressful situations. So there's times where you might have to cut these foods out, but I'm letting you guys know it's okay. It doesn't have to be so stressful. You have to just look at it from like a matter of fact type of thing.
Yeah.
And that's just been at least my experience with that.
Well, a lot of it comes down to trial and error.
Right.
You want to make sure, okay, is this working for me? Is it not? And then am I willing to stay as consistent as I possibly can be with eliminating these foods or having them in really small amounts, if at all. But it really isn't, it's not so much like a sacrifice, if you will, it's more so doing what's right for your body.
Yeah, you're just figuring out. And just because everybody says to eat vegetables and protein every single meal, right, maybe that model is not right for you. Maybe you actually need to eat vegetables only at 1 or 2 meals, but eat carbs and protein at the rest, you know, because that's what's going to work for your body. Like, you know, I'm sure one other person I work with, like, I had to eat a lot of saltine crackers this week because I did have something with my stomach, and even though my test did say gluten sensitive, that's the only thing that I was able to tolerate, right? If you were to tell me, well, you have to eat broccoli, you have to eat this, like, I would have been a complete mess. So sometimes you do also have to listen to a little bit of your intuition and not listen to what everybody else around you is saying. Maybe, again, working with that one professional and really listening to your body and going from there. And not feeling like, you know, sometimes, again, in my experience, like I had a lot of feelings of guilt because I'm like, I'm supposed to be eating vegetables and I'm not, but it just wasn't working with your body. So I think getting down to the root of what you're supposed to do, maybe it could be gluten, maybe it could be FODMAPs. Really looking at it from like an objective point of view, not like, well, again, like this person is gluten-free, so that means I need to be gluten-free.
Yeah. It's not one size fits all kind of thing. And that kind of brings me to the next point that I had wanted to also ask you, Lisa, is as far as tests, like lab tests for not just gluten, but more so like food intolerances. Mm-hmm. What would you say is your take on that? Because I definitely have my opinion on it. Yeah. Based on the science or lack thereof. Yeah. That I've seen. I find that, and even in my practice, right, this kind of segueing into the food intolerances side of things, is that someone can be definitely allergic to shrimp, let's just say, which is not a gluten-containing food. Yeah. And on one of these food allergy or food intolerance tests, it showed up as, in this case, it was green. Green means that it was okay to consume.
Okay.
So they look at it and they're like, wow, this is a bunch of
Right,
BS.
I could be eating this.
Yeah, like because it says that I can have shrimp, but I know my body really well, and if I have shrimp, I go into anaphylaxis. So the point that I'm kind of transitioning into is that when you look at food intolerance tests, I don't know if you had one of those done or if it was just specifically for gluten.
No, I had a whole food intolerance. But the thing is, guys, too, food intolerance is different than also the allergy test. So just because like those IgE, IgG things were coming up in the food allergy, it may not have been coming up in the food intolerance. I think, from my own experience too, I'm being honest, not specifically from the research aspect, but in times of stress, your body is going to react to those more sensitive foods a lot more. Okay, so maybe if I tested now, like let's say I'm not stressed now, I may not react to those certain foods, but if I'm super stressed out and I have IBS and I have this going on, then I might react more to those because my body is just in a more stressful state.
Yeah.
When I was going through my own issues, it helped me because it kind of, I guess it just was like one answer. I'm like, well, at least I know I should avoid this for a few months.
Yeah, for that moment.
And even with that test, it says eliminate it for 6 months and then slowly begin to add it back in. So it doesn't mean because you have an intolerance, you have to eliminate it forever. It's just that your body kind of, I think, maybe gets sick of the same food or for some reason you're not responding well, and then you can add it back in. Now with a food allergy, you're really not ever supposed to add that food back in.
Yeah.
Like I'm allergic to carrots, period, I'm allergic to them. If I eat them, my throat closes up and I get an asthma attack.
But those tests, they get intertwined, like they get very much confused where people think that a food allergy test is a food intolerance test.
They're different,
and vice versa. So now someone does one of the food intolerance tests and it shows up that they can have, in your case, carrots.
Right.
You might kind of be like, what on earth is going on here?
Right.
And you also hit another good point when one thing that I noticed as far as trends go is that, and it's not for every single food and every single person, because at the end of the day, remember, we're all different, but some individuals who consume something quite often, that food is more likely to show up as intolerant in one of those tests.
Yes, that was the case for me as well.
Something that you were eating.
Yeah, I was eating eggs and egg whites every single day, and that was the biggest thing that showed up for me, and I did it. Once I eliminated it, I did feel better.
Yeah.
Now I've added it back in, but limited amounts, and now I'm smarter because I'm not eating the same foods every single day.
You rotate. You want like a rotation.
You rotate. You have to rotate. Yeah, that's really the bottom line that I wasn't as knowledgeable about before, because I think your body just, remember, like a food has a chemical and a physical reaction, in your body. It's reacting with your blood, with everything. So you have to treat it like that, and just take it out and add it back in.
And in this case, if someone does have celiac, it doesn't interact too well.
Right, so celiacs, you do not add gluten back in ever.
Remember, it's an autoimmune disease, so if you do have celiac disease and you consume gluten, your body kind of attacks itself in a way.
Right, like an allergy attack on the inside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's like really something non-harmful, but for your body it's harmful. Like pet dander, it's not harmful in and of itself, but people that are allergic to it, it is harmful, so your body begins to attack.
Yeah. So what would you say are maybe some of the downfalls to someone going on a gluten-free diet, right? For example, let's say me, I read about it in a magazine, not as Eric the dietitian, just Eric the person who's going to Eric the person, right? I go to the grocery store and my best friend, my family member, and this person that I like to follow on Instagram, they look great, they're feeling good, and they're really pushing this gluten-free diet. So I'm like, hey, I want to try it.
Right.
Like, what do you think is something that when I do that, I'm like, hey, all right, let me try to go gluten-free, but there's downfalls to that.
Right, there are downfalls because if you really don't need to go gluten-free, you might be missing those foods that you're regularly used to eating. So like the good thing about it is if you feel better, you're like, oh, this is actually working. Like maybe I need to continue staying gluten-free. But if you're not feeling better and it's beginning to affect you more like on an emotional level and you feel restricted, that's when it can go like the other way. Because once you're restricting something, a lot of times as human beings, we become more obsessed with it. And if you feel like you're really limited and you don't have that good mental attitude about it, you can like begin to binge after. Just like if you take all your fat away, if you take completely all your carbs away.
Yeah.
The good thing is about gluten-free, there's gluten-free bread, there's gluten-free crackers, there's gluten-free pizza dough.
The industry has done a really good job.
Yeah, the industry there's gluten-free cookies. Like you can almost eat anything gluten-free.
Yeah.
But just because something's gluten-free, like I was buying the gluten-free bread, it's still a white piece of bread. It's made out of rice. Like it's still white processed stuff. So do I recommend eating that on a daily basis? No. You know, but if you want that little piece of bread every day, you want to eat it and you are gluten-free, then go for it. But should you eat maybe a sweet potato that has a little bit more nutrition to it?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. You know, so it's about that.
The foods that do contain gluten, they're carbohydrate foods.
They're
right?
still carbs.
And
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's people can get mixed signals as well, where carbohydrates already have a negative association to them, right? Carbs are bad, cut them out, lose fat or whatever. And we know that it's not black or white. So now, if you don't have some kind of medical issue where you should eliminate gluten, and now you start doing it anyway, it's going to be some carbohydrate foods. And just like Lisa was mentioning, now what happens? Now you potentially grow maybe an unnecessary fear of a certain food.
Yeah.
You start associating gluten and carbs as one and the same. So now maybe you don't want to have rice when rice doesn't have gluten.
Right.
But we create this little bit of fear in there, and we think that it's going to be the solution for everything. I've known of people that have actually gone on a gluten-free diet, more so as a fad, as a little bit more of a trend, and over time, because it doesn't taste the same, right? Like if you have something that's gluten-free, and the industry has gotten much better about the taste,
right?
But it doesn't taste exactly the same if you know what the quote-unquote original or the gluten-containing tastes like.
Like a bagel?
Yeah, pretty much. So have a gluten-free bagel, and it's not a bagel anymore. So what happens there is that these people have gone on a gluten-free diet seeking more so weight loss and whatever was trendy.
Right.
They actually ended up gaining a little bit of weight. At this point in time, you know, maybe it was one, lack of education. These were just like random people that I had known of. It could have also been when you take away the gluten, not you, but like the companies do, they add other nutrients in there. Maybe it's sugar, maybe it's fat, some kind of calories. So something that is gluten-free could potentially end up being higher calorie than the normal gluten. So if you don't really have to do it, is there really a need to?
Right. I think that's the bottom line that we're getting to, guys, is that I think it is important if you are seeking or feeling something's off, you need to eliminate wheat from your diet and you'll feel better. I do believe that. I don't recommend to eat regular bread that's on the supermarkets. I really don't. Like the only one that I would closely recommend would be Ezekiel bread or California bread. Because wheat is just, I think as a whole in the United States, people eat way too much wheat, period. Okay, so a gluten-free alternative is there, but just because you're going gluten-free does not mean you will lose weight, like Eric said, because there are so many fillers in products. I think we have to kind of hone down to, if you have celiac, if you suspect you have a gluten intolerance, take it out, 100% take it out. But just because you take it out doesn't mean you refill it with all the gluten-free, but still kind of crappy products like chips and gluten-free bread and gluten-free cookies, right? That's not the solution. The solution is switching it up and having sweet potato and maybe quinoa and maybe more proteins and vegetables and fats. So just because gluten-free is there does not mean you're gonna be healthier.
Yeah, it's not the solution to everything.
We have a comment. What is that?
Do we? We can maybe take some questions.
What would you say about gluten? Okay, what would you say about gluten-free oats? Oats are supposed to be gluten-free. They are naturally gluten-free, unless they are processed on a facility that processes other gluten products. So
I guess kind of mixed in.
if you don't have a gluten sensitivity or celiac, you can just eat regular oats. If you have celiac, you do want to make sure you get gluten-free oats because it just means that they're not processed on that gluten type facility.
Exactly.
What else?
What is scroll?
Mix up. Yes. Okay. Got it. Yeah. So now we're just gonna answer some of the comments. Look, we're getting really nice and close.
Let's see.
Any other comments?
Do we have any questions? Da, 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 da.
Somebody sent us a smiley face.
Thanks for the love, y'all.
Oh, what is that? Scuds? Something Scuds? No, I thought.
No.
Oh, H Scuds.
Let's see any other
Okay.
questions.
Yeah. If you guys have any other questions right now, go ahead. You can also send it to the account. You can DM us. And also, guys, if you want to DM us specific questions, I'm at LizaFit. It's LIZAFIT. And Eric, where are you?
I'm at Eric Bustillo, ERIK BUSTILLO.
Let's see. No other questions.
Yes, awesome, guys. So we hope, guys, that you get really the most out of this and you understand that gluten-free is not absolutely necessary, okay, unless you have celiac, unless you have the gluten sensitivity. But if you suspect you have a gluten sensitivity, experiment with it for 2 weeks.
Trial and error.
And experiment. Like, don't put so much pressure on yourself. Just see if you feel better. If you feel better, then that's fine. Cut it out. But don't have this like super strong emotional attachment to it where you're like panicking on the inside. Because I have been there. I've gone through all those emotions. They're not there anymore, thank God. But as girls, I feel like sometimes we get, especially if we're trying to solve a solution, we get kind of like obsessed with the solution and obsessed with what we're gonna do about it. So just make it a lot more simple. And if you need additional help or you wanna know about how to do a FODMAP diet or what are FODMAP foods, what are gluten-free options, you can reach out to one of us and we'd be more than happy to help you. I am taking on clients right now. Are you, Eric?
I am as well, yes.
Yes, so we're both taking on clients right now. My email is lisascottnutrition@gmail.com. That's LIZASCOTT@gmail.com.
And mine is ericthedietitian@gmail.com. That's ERIKTHEDIETITIAN.
Dietitian with a T, not a C.
Dietitian
You
with
can
a C.
Google it.
And Eric with a K, not a C.
Yes.
Google it.
So, and guys, remember that we work with people also, all over the United States, even internationally. Just because you're not in Miami doesn't mean you can't get help from us. Again, there's some people that do, some people that don't, but we do like to leverage that technology and work with people over Skype, over the phone, over email. So whatever kind of help you need, seek out that help because it's only gonna empower you and it's gonna make your transition better. And we've been through a lot of these things personally, so we can kind of help you also from that personal aspect.
And remember, if you have a question, ask. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask. And there's access to us all over, so ask away.
Yes. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.
Catch y'all in the next one.
Pause this. Okay. So, I'm going to stop this and bye.